moving from Coherence. My name is Howard Martin. I'm the little guy in the picture you see on your screen with a necktie. I'm a steering committee member of the Global Coherence Initiative, Executive Vice President of HeartMath LLC, and the co-author of the HeartMath Solution. And joining me tonight is Gregg Braden, and I'll introduce Gregg in just a second, but I want to thank everyone for being with us. I'd like to say that there are over 2,000 people registered for this event. This is a big webinar, and we are going to have a great time this evening. But as I mentioned, Gregg Braden is with me, and Gregg is a New York Times best-selling author. Prior to his career as an author and a speaker, he was actually a scientist. He was a geologist with Phillips Petroleum Industries. He became a senior computer systems designer for Martin Marietta Defense Systems. But for he's really been, searched the highest mountains and villages, remote monasteries, and forgotten texts all over the world to uncover their timeless secrets. And to date, he's written a lot of books, very successful books, including The Isaiah Effect, The God Code, The Divine Matrix, and his 2008 release, The Spontaneous Healing of Belief. And this year he's got a brand new book coming out called Fractal Time. So that's sort of the official introduction of Gregg. But let me just say that Gregg is more than that to me. He's a friend. And I've now known Gregg for over 15 years. And in the last few years we've been spending a lot more time together, and that's been quite enjoyable for me. We've actually been doing live events together around the country, sharing our work. And back in December when we were together in Los Angeles, we talked about we'd like to do a webinar for the Global Coherence Initiative, sort of a smaller version of what we do in our live presentations where we share the work, both his work and the work that I do at HeartMath, and how all that relates to the Global Coherence Initiative. And that's what we're going to do tonight. So Gregg, it's great to be with you again, although we're in different locations. I'm in California and you're, I believe, in New Mexico. It's certainly good to hear your voice.
Well, Howard, I'm absolutely thrilled to be with you and with our audience on the program. For those of you looking at the picture on your screen, I am the guy that's not wearing the tie, and I cannot help but believe that we are doing something so beautiful and so powerful this evening. I'm thrilled to be part of this technology, Howard, that's allowing us to connect literally with people from all over the world, from so many different countries, so many different time zones simultaneously, exploring this new technology, this heart-based technology, and the role that we now know that it scientifically it demonstrated that it brings to easing much of the chaos that we're seeing in our world today into the coherence that helps us all to become better people and create a better world. So I'm honored and I'm proud to be a part of this tonight. I want to thank you for your kind words in the introduction.
Well, that's fine, Gregg, and I agree with you. We're definitely at an interesting time in history when the speed of change is accelerating, and it's creating a lot of chaos, as well as the opportunity for more coherence. Certainly, we're seeing the chaos, depicted in the world today. We have war going on. We have ecological issues. We have many social issues. We have things like the financial crisis, and a huge amount of stress on people worldwide is taking place. At the same time, there's a great opportunity for growth, both individually and collectively and socially and for the planet itself. And there's great opportunity in these times as well as great challenge. And so I don't think there's ever been a time in history when we've had so much unprecedented change taking place, all at the same time. And I know that your new book, Fractal Time, gets into that a lot. You've been talking about it in the live events we've been doing together. So Gregg, if you would, begin to explain a little bit about what you see. Why is there so much change taking place at this particular time in history?
Well, sure, Howard. I'd love to, and I just want to begin by saying that there is a lot of change happening now. It's not just our imaginations. In the last 22 years, I've had the opportunity to be on every continent of the Earth, with the exception of Antarctica. We've talked to people in many different cultures. And it's not just our imagination here in America or here in the West. People all over the world are seeing unprecedented changes in their world and in their lives, and they're all asking essentially two questions. Howard, first they're asking, what's up? What is going on? What is this change all about? And secondly, they're asking, what can we do? What can we do as individuals? What can we do in our communities to make things better, to ease this transition into whatever it is that the world is heading to and whatever our role is in that change. So I think the first thing I'd like to talk about is the fact that the change is real. In the year 2005, September of 2005, there was an unprecedented conference that was called together, unlike anything we've ever seen before. There were scientists, engineers, social architects, spiritual leaders, religious leaders from all over the world were brought together for a weekend, and they were asked a single question. And the question was, what in the world is going on? And the results of that conference were so profound, Howard, that the journal Scientific American dedicated an entire issue to the proceedings of this conference just to bring the world up to speed on what the experts had agreed upon and what they had identified as the change in our world today. And many of the things they talked about, I know they're no surprise to the people who are listening to our broadcast. They identified the changes in the climate. We certainly know that we've seen extremes of, depending on where we live, some parts of the world are having more rain than they've ever seen, some parts of the world are having none. Some parts of the world, the summers are hotter than they've ever been. Some parts of the world, the winters are colder than they've ever been. And the scientists, they identified those, and we know about that. But they also identified the fact that in the last 25 years, we've seen at least 30 new diseases, both bacterial and viral diseases, that we have no medical cure for, that are happening right now. We've seen this increased stress upon the world's ability to sustain and grow food and distribute food. And there are, in fact, food shortages that are happening in many parts of the world right now. They talked about the sustainability of the way we have grown to fuel our planet, the industry of our planet. And one of the great concerns, Howard, and I think it's going to be important for everything we do tonight, they talked about, in the presence of so many changes in the world, the competition for the resources that are remaining, and as the resources shift to different parts of the world, as some parts of the world can grow food where others could not, the competition, the violent competition for those resources merging from localized conflicts into global battles. And many of these battles they're not the old battles that we're familiar with in terms of borders. These are battles of ideas, and the very real possibility that we're looking at the time when these merge into global conflicts unlike anything we've ever seen in the past. So all of the scientists identified the fact that these things are happening, putting to rest any doubt that it simply is our imagination. And as a matter of fact, they actually placed the quote on the cover of Scientific American that was the conclusion from this conference, and I'd like to share it with our audience. It said that the human race is at a unique turning point. And then they asked this question, and I think this is so powerful. They said, will we choose to create the best of all possible worlds from this time of apparent chaos when everything seems to be spun up and out of control? That is where they identified the opportunity to create what comes next. Will we choose to create the best of all possible worlds? And I think this is a powerful statement, Howard, because it is some of the best minds of our time stating specifically that you and I and the people listening to this broadcast are part of the solution and part of whatever it is that's emerging from this time of chaos that we see right now. So this is the scientific community for the first time giving a voice and identifying the fact that this change is afoot. And one of the next questions that they've asked, and it's a question you asked me to identify and share a little bit with here on the broadcast, is why? Why are all these things happening right now? Is it just a coincidence that so many great challenges are converging upon one time in history? Is there something more going on? And this is particularly interesting to me. It's a subject of the new book, Fractal Time. And one of the things I found, Howard, is it's determined, the answer to the question is determined by who you are asking. If we're asking the scientists of the world why these things are happening now, more often than not, in the past, what they've said is it's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence that so many challenges that threaten the survival of our species happen to be occurring in the same moment in time, on the one hand. But on the other hand, when you look at our most cherished indigenous and ancient spiritual traditions, they say, and they've said for thousands of years, that this is anything but a coincidence, that we are actually living this rare moment in time the close of a great cycle of time, known as a great world age that began about 5,000 years ago. And from their perspective and the teachings that were handed down from those who lived through the last cycle that we're living through now, what they say to us, Howard, is that the kinds of things that we're experiencing now, these things always happen at the close of a cycle. The changes that we're seeing in the world, what appear to be sudden and abrupt changes to us, are actually driven by great cycles of time and events that extend beyond our world into our solar system, even beyond. And that if we have the wisdom to recognize what these changes are really all about, why they occur and how they're occurring, that there's a tremendous opportunity in there. So from this perspective, the many events that appear to be challenging us as a species right now can also be a trigger for us to grow and evolve, recognize what's worked in the past, and maybe change the things that haven't worked and do more of the things that have worked as we move forward, emerging from whatever the change is offering.
Now, Greg, I've heard you talk before, excuse me, but you talk about this 26,000-year cycle and how our planet and solar system is actually moving through space, and this goes on through these cycles on, it's a regular cycle that we're in right now. Could you elaborate upon that just a little bit?
Sure, and this is precisely where I was going, and this is what's so interesting. The ancient traditions have always told us that this change was coming because it always does. When our planet and our solar system reach a very precise place in the orbit that revolves around the center of our Milky Way galaxy, a great energy source that emanates very powerful magnetic fields from the center of our Milky Way galaxy. And where we are in relation to those fields, if we're closer to the fields in some parts of our orbit, we experience certain kinds of change. If we're further from that source of energy in other parts of our orbit, we experience other kinds of changes. And where we find ourselves now, and this is what's so interesting because our own scientists now are able to verify the fact that these orbits are occurring and the fact that we are, in fact, at a very rare point in the orbit. We are now completing the end of the furthest point that we could be from the source of energy in the center of our Milky Way galaxy. We're completing that orbit, and we're now beginning to head back closer to the source of energy. And as we do this, Howard, one of the things that makes this so interesting is it is actually carrying us across the equator of the Milky Way galaxy. If we could think of our spiral Milky Way galaxy, looking at it from the side, as two saucers placed on top of one another, and we can imagine that equator that divides the two, just like the equator that separates the northern hemisphere from the southern hemisphere of the Earth. If we can kind of imagine that, we are, as a planet and as a solar system, we're moving across that equator, and the midpoint of that motion is the year 2012, at the solstice of December 21st, 2012. And this is a lot of the conversation that's going on in the media now is about precisely what we can expect to happen as we go through this shift. So if I could have that next slide, Howard, I can talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
But the fact that the cycles are known, that the cycles are predictable, is good news to us because it tells us if we know where to look in the past, we know what to expect when we're going through these very rare experiences that are only known. Well, the last time something like this happened was about 5,125 years ago. So the ancient traditions, specifically the Mayans, called these great cycles of time world ages. So as we come to the close of this cycle, we are coming to the close of a great world age, and by virtue of the definition of a cycle, the close of any cycle is also the beginning of what comes next. So not only are we ending one great world age that began over 5,000 years ago, but we are also laying the foundation for all that comes next with the beginning of the new cycle. Now, what our own science now is beginning to say, and this is what our slide is showing, if our viewers can look on the computer screen, that the world age endings in the past have always brought global changes. And we're going to talk about some of these tonight because they're important for the way we come together collectively in our hearts. They've always brought about changes of magnetic fields of the planet, and those changes of the magnetic fields produce changes in the climate, in the rising or the lowering of sea levels, and the disappearance or the abundance of resources. These are all the things we're seeing happening right now. Our change is bringing a decrease or a decline in the magnetic fields, allowing the earth and the oceans to warm. As that happens, the ice on the poles begins to melt. As that happens, the ocean currents and the weather patterns change, and the way we grow food changes as well. So what we can say is that the world age endings trigger changes within us, human changes. We must respond to the changes that are happening in the world around us. And the way we respond is now directly linked to cycles of war and peace in the past. So I think this is what we're seeing happening right now, Howard, is we're living this rare moment in time. And if we can recognize the opportunity for what this time creates in our lives, what we begin to see is that the end of each cycle and the beginning of the next creates a point that is now known in scientific terms as a choice point. That's literally the term that scientists use, choice point. And it's in this choice point where we determine as a civilization how we respond to the changes in the planet. As the world changes, do we make the mistakes of the civilizations of the past, violently compete for the remaining resources, and we try to make the world the way it's always been? Or do we cooperate as a global family and work together to see our way through these changes? Now, in the past, civilizations that we have on record, when we look into the geological and the archaeological record, what we find is the collapse of some of the greatest civilizations on the planet, Howard, happened at precisely the point in the cycles where we are now. And those civilizations, as great as they were, they collapsed and disappeared. The question is, can we learn from them as we move into this time in our lives now? And I think this is precisely the opportunity that we have now. If we recognize that the changes are part of a natural cycle, that they are intense, no doubt, intense changes. But here's the good news, Howard. These world age endings, the changes they bring historically have been brief. They're intense, brief cycles. So if we can find a way to work together as a family on this planet to help one another cooperate to get through this rare moment in time, because we need to for our survival, my sense is that we're going to find that we actually like working together. And even when the challenges are no longer there, that will be the way that we choose to live our lives from that point forward. And I personally believe that is the great opportunity for our time in history. So what we're looking at from this perspective is that we have a choice. Our choice is, are we going to compete with one another or cooperate as we go through these changes? Are we going to choose chaos or coherence? And that's what this program is all about. It's about the science that's showing us how we can embrace that coherence in our personal lives individually, and how our individual choices become our collective answer to this time in history. And that's a long answer to a short question, Howard, but it's the reason I'm so passionate and so excited to be sharing this time with you and this technology, because we can reach so many people with the good news of how to bring coherence into their lives.
Well, that was a great answer, Greg, and that is the reason, or one of the main reasons for creating the Global Coherence Initiative, is helping people make this choice. If we have enough people working together, like you said, really cooperating and really working towards creating a better world, a world that's more coherent, starting with activating more coherence in ourselves, and then collectively putting out hard focus, care, and intention to planetary need. As you know, it's our hypothesis and belief that we can actually help begin to shift the consciousness climate, so to speak, of the planet, making it easier for other people to make choices that do lead to the world that we all believe in and want to see.
Well, absolutely, and I know we're seeing this happen. We're seeing it happen already. The science is demonstrating the feasibility of changing the biology within our bodies, changing the heart-brain coherence within our bodies for us personally, and we all benefit personally from that. And that's a lot of what HeartMath has been about for the last 25 years. But now the science is showing us, Howard, that beyond that, our personal changes are actually linked to the very fields of the earth that are undergoing the change at the close of this cycle. The fields of our heart, the magnetic fields of our heart, are directly linked to the magnetic fields of the earth, the very fields that sustain life on this planet and that are going through those changes. And as we learn to manage those fields within our hearts by choosing the way we feel about what's happening in our world, what we're actually doing is influencing those fields that connect all life on this planet in a very powerful, positive, life-affirming way. And that's the beauty of us coming together at the close of this cycle when we're faced with the greatest challenges of 5,000 years of recorded human history, and only at this time, I think it's no accident, that only at this time we're coming to the realization that we're part of the fields that are changing and that we are learning the language that can stabilize and bring coherence to those changing fields.
Well, I agree, and I think that, you brought some interesting points about, about the choice points that we're all facing today, and that in the Scientific American magazine report on what all the leaders had said about the change we're in, they asked, will we choose to create the best of all possible worlds? Mm-hmm. I believe we will. Despite the intensity that we are experiencing today, I believe that many people are already making those choices, and I believe that part of the choice is to learn to live more from the intelligence of the heart. And as you and many of the listeners know, we've been involved in this sort of work at HeartMath for many, many years now. And the intelligence of the heart is really simply, that intelligence that we have that's high speed, it's intuitive, it's the intelligence that looks out for our best interests. It's the type of intelligence that gives us the ability to do things that we usually can't do. It's the source of some of the most revered and respected emotional qualities that we have, like love, compassion, care, appreciation, and non-judgment. To me, the intelligence of the heart is really my own best friend and my most reliable guide for making decisions big and small. And it's an intelligence that's been around forever, and it's been written about and talked about for thousands of years. And I think that what's been said about it is true, but I also believe that this new intelligence of the heart is all part of the emergence of the new things taking place in the shift, and that there is a new form or new octave of the intelligence of the heart that's accessible to all of us now. And it does give us the ability to help manage the stress and strain of modern living, and to find meaning in all of this that's happening around us, and to give us the potency and power to make the changes that we need to make to really be fully participating in this amazing time period that we live in the middle of this global shift in consciousness. And at HeartMath, we've taken a lot of time and put a lot of interest in looking at this to begin to put some substance around it. We all experience it sort of intuitively, but we wanted to know more when we started HeartMath, so we began to do rigorous scientific research to look at the communication pathways by which the heart and the brain, shared information. And we found some amazing things. There are other researchers, of course, around the world, doing work as well in this area. But we found that the heart actually did, at the biological level, do more than pump blood. That it communicated with the brain and the rest of the body. It sent powerful healing commands to the brain and the rest of the body. And it did it in 4 different ways. At the sort of hardwired biological level, there was the heart's nervous system, a very complex nervous system existing in the heart, sending information to the big brain and the head. We also found that changes in what's called the blood pressure wave created changes in the electrical activity of the brain. We also learned that the heart produced hormones, and that in 1983 it was actually reclassified as part of our hormonal system. So there was this biochemical communication, taking place from the heart as well. And all this was very interesting because it showed it, just at the pure biological level, that the heart played a bigger role than just pumping blood, and that brain function, for example, was critically dependent upon all these signals coming from the heart. But where it got very interesting to me was the next level of communication, and that's an energetic communication. Because you see, the heart is actually an electrical organ. It produces by far the strongest source of bioelectricity in our body, up to 40 to 60 times more bioelectricity than the second most powerful source, which is the brain. This electrical energy permeates every single cell in our body, in a sense binding the cells together. It's strong enough, however, that it creates an electromagnetic field that goes out around us and extends beyond the skin out into space. Now, Dr. Roland McCready, another member of the Global Coherence Steering Committee and the leader of the scientific team, he and his researchers have measured that field extending outside the body about 3 to 4 feet away. So we are literally, broadcasting, an electromagnetic field that's extending outside the skin. You see it in the picture on the screen in a torus-like shape, extending outside the body about 3 to 4 feet. Now, we've also done some experiments showing that the frequencies in that field, in other words, the ingredients in the field, actually do go through changes depending upon what emotions we are feeling. For example, if we're feeling a strong negative emotion like anger or frustration, very often we see what's called an incoherent spectra in that field. Lots of different frequencies sort of competing with one another for power. We've also seen that when people are in a genuine state of heart-based emotions, like appreciation, for example, that we often see what's called a coherent spectra. There's order in the electromagnetic frequency pattern being generated from the heart. This now takes us beyond just hardwired biology into physics. How do fields relate to one another? And electromagnetic waves produced by the heart really are, moving out into our external environment and interacting and resonating with others. And so there's a large body of research now, emerging research, on how living systems affect one another. How do I affect someone else? How do we affect plants and animals? How does the planet affect us? How do the geomagnetic fields of the planet affect us? And how do we affect them? And this is a big part of what we're doing on the research side of the Global Coherence Initiative, is really exploring more about how these things relate to one another and how living systems affect one another. I'm going to share one really simple example of this that I think all of the viewers and listeners tonight will enjoy. This is the Josh and Mabel story, the story of a boy and a dog. Josh was the son of Dr. Roland McCready, and Mabel was a dog who lived at my house. And Josh would come with some of the other Heart Math children to an after-school program there, and he and the dog became quite close to one another. They developed a very close bond. Roland observed this and wondered if there was anything that could be measured between the boy and the dog. Now, one of the ways that we look at the communication from the heart-brain communication, is something called heart rhythms or heart rate variability analysis. In other words, heart rhythms do go through changes. They become more coherent or less coherent depending upon our emotional state. So Roland McCready took the dog up to his research lab. He put a portable heart rhythm recorder on the dog and then one on his son, put them in separate rooms. Here's what we saw. On the left-hand side of the graph, you see Mabel at the top and Josh at the bottom, and you see that their heart rhythms are very sort of jagged and irregular. Then, when Josh enters the room, you see there's a smooth sine wave-like pattern occurring in the boy, but also in the dog. And that's what a coherent heart rhythm looks like. That's when heart-brain communication is optimized, and that's usually what occurs when we are feeling a strong positive emotion. In this case, love between the boy and the dog. And you see that reflected in the individual patterns of Josh and Mabel, but you can see that they are synchronizing. Those patterns are synchronized patterns between the boy and the dog. Josh leaves the room, Mabel doesn't like it. You see the heart rhythms go back into a more chaotic pattern. And this is just one example of how living systems may affect one another. In this case, looking at heart rate variability or heart rhythm analysis to see the changes that occur as this boy and this dog shared their love.
Howard, I have to tell you, I've seen this so many times, and to me it's one of the most touching examples of this, and tangible, concrete examples of this communication and this relationship. In this case, Josh and Mabel exemplify it between the two of them, but it happens within and between us every day all over the world on different levels, whether it's with our loved ones or in the office place or in the workplace, sitting next to someone on a plane or in the mall. We're always in communication with one another in these subtle, and in this case, nonverbal level. But what I think is especially beautiful about this is that while, if my understanding is correct, this particular experiment was showing an involuntary response between Josh and Mabel, what we now know is that we can learn to create those kinds of effects intentionally by managing the way we feel in our hearts. And I think that's the beauty of being able to speak this language of the heart in our everyday lives. That's what this example is showing us.
Well, that's right, and that's what the heart math techniques and the M-wave technology, which I'm going to demonstrate that in just a minute or two, shows. They're tools to help us enter this state on demand, at will, so that we can be more in this coherent state. And as we do, we can begin to look at how we affect one another in a different way. And we've taken that further, of course, with the Global Coherence Initiative, and seeing, is there a global effect? When you have large numbers of people who are operating in a coherent state, can we impact living systems, like the actual ionosphere, geomagnetic field, and plants, animals, people, consciousness itself? And that's what we're looking to experiment on, and to hopefully provide some proof for as we move forward into the future. At the core of the Global Coherence Initiative is a state called coherence. That's why we call it the Coherence Initiative. And coherence is a state that simply could be stated as a state that we're in when all of our parts are working together, when everything is synchronized. At the biological level, it's when the heart rhythms are smooth and ordered. And the heart is sort of like the master rhythm maker in the body, the master oscillator. And when the heart rhythms become smooth and ordered, they begin to draw in or synchronize other bodily systems to those heart rhythms. Things like respiration, digestion, immune system response, hormonal releases, things like that, all begin to synchronize and work in harmony in this coherent state. It's also a state that is triggered by and also gives us the ability to experience and sustain positive emotions. Emotions long metaphorically associated with heart, like the things I've mentioned earlier: love, care, compassion, appreciation, tolerance, patience, forgiveness. Those kind of emotions are really part of the coherent state. So it's biological and psychological in nature. In the coherent state, less energy is wasted. It's a very powerful state. It's where we can put extra potency into anything that we do when we're in the coherent state. It's like an athlete being in the zone. It's a high-performance state. It is calm, poised, and balanced, but not withdrawn. In the coherent state, we are actively engaged with life. We are aware and connected. We can feel and see and understand things in new ways. It's our belief that for sort of energetic contributions to have more impact, it means things like people's meditations, prayers, affirmations, intentions, etc., for them to have even more potency and to have the ability to shift consciousness in a more dynamic way and possibly quicker, that if you add the coherent state to it, it can help with that process because it simply adds potency. Coherence is a neutral state.
If I could just share, what you've said here is so powerful. And in the audiences over the last 5 years that I've shared this with throughout the world, for so many people, Howard, what you just said is the key that they felt was missing in their practices in the past. And the key is this, is the state of coherence. It is not a passive zoning out with our eyes closed in this meditative state. It is a very active form of feeling, of consciously holding that feeling, creating and holding and sustaining that feeling in the human heart that induces this experience of coherence.
Well, thank you for that comment, and for reinforcing that point in sort of my stream of consciousness there, because that is true. And the most important part of the Global Coherence Initiative is really the members, all of us, working on increasing our individual coherence and then working together as a team in collective coherence to help shift global consciousness from instability and discord. And that's what we're trying to do. The science part of it is very interesting and very important. It's kind of the sexier side of the Global Coherence Initiative. But to me, the science is not as important as is the individual coherence building and then the collective coherence building. That has the ability to really give the scientific experiments a chance to be successful in a sense, to prove something that we all want to, hopefully that it proves, being neutral in our scientific explorations. But hopefully we'll see something that's interesting, that teaches us something, that gives us some verification. I think the key to that lies within us increasing our individual coherence and then collectively working together. Now, coherence can actually be measured. And you measure it again through looking at heart rhythms or heart rate variability analysis. That's the medical term for it. In these two graphs you see 200 seconds of heart rate variability data. And on the vertical axis is the beats per minute, 50 at the bottom, 100 at the top. Now, what we're looking at the top is someone who is experiencing the feeling of frustration. And you see that the heart is speeding up and slowing down rather erratically over a short amount of time. Line going up means the heart is speeding up. Could be a couple of heartbeats on each line. The lines sort of represent, you know, the dot. It would be a dot where the heartbeat would be, then space, then another dot, and the lines are connecting the dots. And so you see this very jagged and irregular pattern occurring, and that's occurring from someone feeling frustration. When that pattern is happening, it's not good for the physical body. It's not good for the nervous system, for the physical heart. It triggers a release of hormones in the body that are not good for us in excessive amounts, like cortisol and adrenaline. And it sends signals to our brain that begin to shut down the higher perceptual centers in the brain. It creates a condition in the brain called cortical inhibition. And so that happens when we're feeling a feeling like frustration. Now, in the bottom graph, this is someone who is in our research lab, and this is the same person. Now they've switched the emotional state. Now they're feeling a heart-related feeling of appreciation. Now you see this smooth sine wave-like pattern. Heart is speeding up, then naturally it begins to slow back down, then naturally it begins to speed up again. And this sine wave-like pattern is the pattern of synchronization within the biological systems. It's good for the nervous system, good for the physical heart. It engenders the release of regenerative hormones like DHEA, for example, and it sends signals to the brain that open up the higher perceptual centers in the brain. The condition in the brain that it creates is called cortical facilitation. In this state, we have that awareness that you were mentioning earlier. We can see into things. We can see the big picture. We have perceptions about ourselves that are deeper. We understand ourselves better. We understand others. We connect with others, and we connect with the world in a different way. And all this comes from a change of heart, from moving out of emotions like frustration into ones like appreciation, shifting those heart rhythms and sending a different signal to the body. And that's what coherence looks like when we measure it. Now, once we understood this, we developed technology that anyone can use to begin to train themselves to go into coherent state more easily, and I'm going to pull that up for us right now. This is called the M-Wave PC. Now, it has a little handheld unit that does the same thing, but this one is fun to use in a setting like this because you can see things. You can see the images on the screen. The little handheld is called the M-Wave Personal Stress Reliever, and that's portable and the one that I use most often. This is the M-Wave PC, which runs on PC computers. There's a little sensor that's plugged into the USB port on my computer and attached to my ear. When I'm going to start this, you're going to see my heart rhythms on the screen in real time. And then in the bottom right-hand side of the screen, it's going to be giving my coherence score. It's going to showing how I'm moving from a state of low coherence, which is normal, into a state of medium coherence, which was good. It's definitely improved. And then it finally into the state of high coherence, which is that smooth sine wave-like pattern that you saw in the graphs that would be the optimal state. So I'm going to start it now, and I'm going to be quiet, and Gregg's going to instruct me here, and we're going to give you an example of what coherence looks like in real time.
Howard, before you do that, we can't see it on the screen, so if you could go up there and put it on screen for us.
Thank you very much. We have technical assistance from Dale Walker. Thank you, Dale. And hopefully you can see it now. Can you verify, Dale?
No, we can't see it. You need to go under Show My Screen and go down to it.
I've got it. It's what's pulled up now. Hold on one second. Let me back out of this real quickly, and we'll try this again. Sorry to everyone for the little technical inconvenience here, but we'll have this up and running very quickly. I'm going to now pull it up again, Dale, and let me know if you see it. It says application is paused on my screen.
You may need to shut down your PowerPoint.
Okay. 1 second. Okay, PowerPoint's down. Let me go to M-Wave PC. So I'm saying screen sharing has been paused on my screen, so we're not seeing it.
I don't have a solution for that.
Is the PowerPoint back now?
Yeah, the PowerPoint is back.
Okay, hold on one second. And it's not allowing me to show this. So we won't be able to show this to everyone tonight, but I think I've given a good example of from the static graphs of what coherence looks like. The M-Wave PC is technology that allows us to see it in real time. It's something that people use to train themselves to be going into the coherent state more easily. It's great feedback. It also trains us to really feel those positive heart-related emotions that we really all want to feel more often, more of the time. So we won't be able to do that tonight. Maybe the next time we do a webinar, Greg, we'll get the M-Wave PC up and running, and we can show everybody what takes place in the body as we actually shift the emotional state. But I think this graph here depicts things very well.
Well, Howard, you're doing a beautiful job of describing it verbally, and you know, it wasn't that long ago we didn't have the luxury of a computer that could show us these things, and we did everything verbally anyway. So
that's right. And the picture on the screen now is a picture of what you would have seen. You know, it's a picture of the M-Wave PC screen that shows what the patterns look like and what that does. And we'll get to that next time we do one. But let's talk a little bit now, if we can, Greg, in the time that we have remaining, about the Global Coherence Initiative itself and how what you and I have both been talking about up to this point, how that relates to what we're doing with this initiative.
Absolutely, Howard. And to do that, I'd like to go back to just the conversation I had early in this program, and I was speaking about the significance of the magnetic fields of the Earth. And it's so interesting to me that of all the changes that are being discussed publicly, this is something we're hearing very little about, when it may in fact be the key to everything. If we can think of the magnetic fields of the Earth as a blanket that protects our planet and all life on the planet, it surrounds our planet, it buffers us, it shields us from harmful radiation, from what is called the solar wind, ionized plasma particles coming in from our sun and from space. It provides that function for us, number one. Number two, Howard, and what you've just alluded to, is that the human heart is the strongest biomagnetic generator in the human body, and that the human heart creates these fields of magnetism that not only permeate every cell within our bodies, but that the fields extend beyond our bodies to some degree on a level that's physically measurable. But now the data is suggesting that our heart's magnetic fields are intimately enmeshed within the magnetic field of the Earth, the very field that is so vital to all life, the very field that sustains life on the planet, and the very field that we are all connected to. Now, the implications for the discoveries we're going to talk about are twofold. Number one, the fact that all life is connected to these fields suggests that whatever happens in the field in one place, to some degree, all life is being affected. If it's a positive change, then all life is being affected beneficially. And this is what makes this project so exciting. Number two, the fact that these fields are the fields that are undergoing the change at the close of the cycle, that the fields are weakening and that they are triggering all of the changes, physical changes in the Earth that we're now responding to, and the fact that we're learning to speak the language of these fields in our heart and possibly moderate the changes that now are actually threatening our existence in some respects. Those two implications are why I am so passionate and so excited about this Global Coherence Initiative. What the HeartMath studies and the supporting research now is showing is that there is an overlap between the frequencies in the magnetic fields of the Earth and the frequencies generated by the human heart. And the way these studies came about, Howard, can I share some of the satellite studies quickly as we're going through this?
Sure. I don't have slides on those tonight, but go ahead, please.
Absolutely. Well, this is co-creation in action, unrehearsed, real time. This was we've got two geosynchronous satellites placed in orbit above the Earth, one in the northern hemisphere, one in the southern hemisphere, called the GOES satellites. Every 30 minutes, those satellites are sending a signal back to the Earth, measuring the intensity of the magnetic field of the Earth. And it was following the events of September 11, 2001, where scientists saw a response in the Earth's magnetic fields that was happening at the same time that the humans on the Earth were responding to the events of 9/11. While the data is still being gathered, what we can say is that there is a strong and direct correlation. The correlation is so strong between the human emotions focused in a moment in time and the satellites showing that Earth's magnetic fields were responding in some way to our emotions that we can say there is an effect. We're still exploring what that effect means. But it strongly suggests now that when we come together and join our heart fields intentionally, that we have the opportunity to change and influence these fields in a positive way. And what the studies now are showing is that in this positive influence, that we call coherence, that we think better, as Howard just mentioned, that our cognitive abilities are better. We're physically better as people. Our immune systems are stronger. We have the very positive biochemical and hormonal changes within our bodies. But now the studies are showing that those changes extend beyond our bodies, and through this field that connects all life, we communicate those changes with one another, and even those who are not actively participating in the change benefit from what a few, relatively few, can create in their hearts. So the Global Coherence Initiative is the first of its kind, science-based initiative taking advantage of these two principles. One, the magnetic fields of the Earth that connect and protect all life, and number two, our ability to influence those fields as individuals and collectively by choosing the way we feel within our hearts. Now, through the studies of HeartMath, we know that coherence is something that may be learned, and the HeartMath researchers are working with other organizations actually creating a series of global sensors that allow us to directly measure the magnetic fields of the Earth in very precise ways to know when our collective coherence is having the effect in those fields. And Howard, to the best of my knowledge, this is the first time. This has never been done before. And I think it's probably no accident that only now, at the close of this great cycle of time, when we find 6 billion plus people on the planet faced with the greatest number and the greatest magnitude of challenges ever to face a civilization or a population as we know it, that at the same time we are also learning the ability to speak to the fields in a way that mitigates much of the suffering brought about by those changes and helps us ease from the chaos created by the changes into the coherence that lays the foundation for a heart-based way of life. And I think it's no accident. Those things are all happening right now.
Well, that's great, and it has never been done before. And again, there's research coming out all the time now showing the effect of the ionosphere and the Earth's geomagnetic field on us. Things like health, social outcomes, terrorist attacks, things like that, all being linked now to changes in the field. So the evidence is becoming stronger and stronger of the effect of these fields on us. Now, where this gets interesting is if those fields are affecting us, then there's a relationship between us and the field. So can we affect the field? That's the hypothesis. And our belief is yes, we can. And if you have enough people working together coherently, and they're each individual generating a coherent state and then working together, that there's an impact, a positive impact that can take place on the Earth's geomagnetic and ionospheric fields. Now, this is a hypothesis. It's got a lot of work to do to be proven. The research is going to be done very carefully, slowly if needed. We want to do it rigorously. We want to do it by the most strict standard of scientific rules so that we can prove something definitively. But what Roland McCready, his research team, and our scientific advisors are doing is doing something never been done before, building a sophisticated land-based system to be able to look at what they're calling Earth energetics, which is these various fields that are produced by the Earth, and then really studying how these fields relate to humans and how humans relate to the field, and as I said a minute ago, how we can consciously affect those fields. And to do that, we've started, of course, with the Global Coherence Monitoring System, which is the sensitive magnetic field detectors to monitor fluctuations in the Earth's geomagnetic fields and the resonances in the ionosphere. Now, we have the working sensor station here in Northern California, Maggie, which is picking up great data from these fields. Our researchers are looking at that data, analyzing that data, learning more about the information produced by this particular sensing device. As you know, the goal is to place more sensor sites around the world. Some interesting news that they gave me recently is that we originally thought it could be between 50 and 100 sensors needed to really have a fully functional ground-based system. Now they say they think they can do it with 12 to 15. Strategically placed, and the reason they think that is because of how much data they're getting back from the one sensor site that we have here in Northern California. So this is very exciting. There's a lot more work to be done to build this system, and it's going to require more funding, and it's going to require time. In the meantime, in the not-too-distant future, we're going to begin to offer some experiments to the Global Coherence Initiative community to where we want to monitor changes that they're experiencing in life with changes we see in the field, using our sensor, but also using the government satellites in space and other sensing devices like random number generators through Roger Nelson's project as well, to begin to correlate changes that we are experiencing collectively with changes in the field. And that's going to be a very exciting first step in the research initiatives we're going to be doing with the community. But I love this slide. It's in all of our presentations. But in a sense, you know, metaphorically speaking at least, it's like listening in for the first time, you know, to the heart rhythms and brain waves of the planet. And that's what you're speaking about, Greg. That has never been done before, not in this way, and that is a very exciting part of this initiative.
Okay. I'm just looking at this picture on my screen as well, and it just evokes such a beautiful image. I think the exciting thing, Howard, it goes back to the first few moments of our program. People all over the world, they recognize the change is afoot. They're saying, what can we do? What can we do? How can we help? How can we contribute? And for so long, we've all done the best we knew how to do individually with our individual projects, our individual techniques. The beauty of the Global Coherence Initiative, from my perspective, and what I'm seeing happening with people that are participating, is that the ability to create coherence in our lives is something that can be used with as an adjunct to anything that we're already doing, our own prayers, our own meditations, our own way of living and our own way of being. It doesn't ask us to relinquish or shift to a new belief system. It helps us to really focus the good intentions that we've created in many different ways and to give those good intentions a voice and a meaning and a power that perhaps we haven't seen on this planet for a very long time.
Yeah, that's exactly what we hope to do, and we already have now, thousands of members in the Global Coherence Initiative. We have been doing things to try to increase the coherence individually and collectively, and we'll be doing more. Tonight's program is a good example of that, of you and I volunteering our time to come together to talk to groups of people that would like to know more about what we're doing and to hear our views on this sort of thing. Our hope, for me at least, is that people will be more and more excited about the initiative, that they will want to know more about how they can increase their coherence and want to practice more of that in their own lives. And there's a personal benefit to that, far beyond even, the being a member, is that the benefits that an individual receives from doing that. And so I hope that we have inspired people to want to do more of that, and that they'll be willing to talk about the project more to others. We are just one of many carrying initiatives out there doing our part. And we are partnering with and want to partner with more organizations doing good things. And hopefully people will want to spread the word, bring in some more members, and bring in some great alliances for us. And I'd also like to mention, too, that any donations people can make are always appreciated. We need funds to build out this monitoring system. We're going to be adding some really interesting new things to the website soon that will require funding. So if you're inspired by this and motivated by this, then I can just say that a donation really would help and would be appreciated. And you can do it on the website, on the Global Coherence Initiative website. Just click the donation button, and it'll give you the instructions on what to do. But I've enjoyed being with you, Greg. This is great. We, as I mentioned earlier, have been doing some live events together. We're going to be doing some events again in 2009. I think we'll be together somewhere in April and again in December, and maybe somewhere in Europe. So
somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere in all three places. But all those arrangements are being made now, and we'll have information about that posted on the Global Coherence Initiative website. in the event section. So if you want to come out somewhere this year and see Gregg and I together and present, more information in a longer form presentation, we certainly would welcome that and would love to meet you. But thank you, Gregg, for all you're doing for this project, for being on this webinar, and for all the many wonderful things that you're doing to help people around the world.
Well, Howard, I want to say thank you as well and let you know how much I've enjoyed our time together in this program. Obviously, it's unrehearsed and it's a live co-creation in action. I think the beauty and what I'd like for our listeners to take away from all of the things that we've done here together tonight is that our own science now is validating the heart of our most cherished and ancient spiritual traditions, and that is the sense that it is by working together that we transcend the great challenges, personally and individually and as well as collectively in our time in history, and that now faced with the greatest challenges that many experts say threaten our very survival, that we're finding the same science that talks to us about the challenges is saying that the way to get through this time is by working together as a family. And what you're doing now, Howard, and what HeartMath and the Global Coherence Initiative are doing is giving us the vehicle for the first time to come together, and we can do it by sitting in our own living rooms. We don't have to travel halfway around the world and spend a lot of money, a lot of time in a ballroom with thousands of people. We can be in our living room with our families, sharing our hearts, and I think that's the beauty of what this is all about. So I want to thank you for that tonight.
Well, back at you. So I want to thank everyone who's joined us for this event. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for all your support for the Global Coherence Initiative. I can safely say from all of us that are part of the project and from Gregg as well that we wish you all the best. We'll be getting together again, and until we do, take care.